another edition of WrestleChat. The title card implies, well, we have lost an absolute hero in the pro wrestling industry, and we have officially lost Chyna, also known as Joanie Laurer. If I'm pronouncing her name wrong, I apologize, but Chyna was an absolute legend in professional wrestling. Don't get me wrong. She was absolutely phenomenal. We will go over all of the illustrious remarks and everything over her career in a little while, but first I will go over what has transpired in the last 24 hours. First of all, I literally just found out about this 6 o'clock this morning Mountain Time when I looked at my phone and I saw a video post, a notification, if you will, from What Culture Wrestling. I know I've mentioned them on the show before. They're phenomenal. If you haven't checked them out before, do so whenever you get a moment. They are fantastic. Super hilarious videos, but today, nothing funny about this. I mean, I saw basically the notification that said, What Culture Wrestling just uploaded a video, and it said, Chyna, what just happened? And I'm like, oh no, what did she do now? I thought it was something absolutely crazy that happened, or some rumor that broke that said she was going into the Hall of Fame or something like that next year, or whatever. But then when I watched the video, I realized what was really happening, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to look up more about this. And thankfully I did, because I always try and get a decent understanding of what I read about and what I hear about, and I always try to find out more, and I always try to find out one question, and I want to find out answers, and the one question I always ask myself is why? What exactly happened? Same thing happened when I heard about Ultimate Warrior, same thing with Dusty Rhodes, Roddy Piper, Mae Young, things like that, and I usually try to keep up with that, and that's exactly what I did, and like I said, thankfully I did. So, going on to that, the first thing I read was a breaking news article from WrestleZone, because I get all of my professional wrestling news from WrestleZone.com. Again, if you haven't checked them out, they are amazing. They've got breaking stories, spoilers galore if you're one of those people that likes reading spoilers, but the very first post on their website, on their homepage, said, breaking news, Chyna reportedly passes away. And later on, it was confirmed by her manager, but going on, it basically took me to a page where it said, the official Twitter page of Chyna posted the following. The actual tweet itself reads, and I quote, hashtag rip Chyna, sad face, sad face, sad face, all of us on Team Chyna, love you and will love you forever, babe, Felix. Then they posted two pictures, of course, the picture of her little tribute card, 1999 to 2016. The other one is a small little statement from Team Chyna, from Felix on Team Chyna, that says, and I quote, if it will ever load, it is with deep sadness to inform you today that we lost a true icon, a real-life superhero, Joanie Laurer, a.k.a. Chyna. The ninth wonder of the world has passed away. She will live forever in the memories of her millions of fans and all of us that loved her. Felix, Team Chyna. When I read more about this, I literally was taken aback and taken into shock, and I was just saying to myself, why? Like, how could this have happened? Things like that. And there are so many reports on the internet that are attributed to things such as drug overdoses and all that sorts of things, and Chyna's had so many problems ever since leaving what was then known as the World Wrestling Federation, now known as World Wrestling Entertainment. But Chyna, nonetheless, was a truly remarkable performer. She was, in her own right, she truly was the ninth wonder of the world. Don't get me wrong. And I'm literally getting choked up as I'm talking about this. And no, it's not because I have just received my medications, but Chyna was fantastic. Whenever I go back on the WWE Network and look at all the great footage from all her incredible matches, one of the first times I ever bear witness to a Chyna match was back around 2009 to 2010 when SmackDown was celebrating its 10th anniversary, and I had gotten the Best of SmackDown 3-disc DVD set. The 3-disc DVD set included a match with Chyna and either it was Jeff Jarrett or Billy Gunn or somebody like that, and it included a match that was almost in its entirety, and it basically, the ending of the match came when two referees were in the ring, both Chyna's and the other person's shoulders are down, and they both counted the 3 count, and nobody knew who won. I don't know what happened because I tried to research what transpired after the match was over, and nobody knew what was going on. I replayed the tape over and over and over again, trying to see if, just for a millisecond, one of the two referees was slower than the other, and neither one of them were. It was exactly at the same exact moment. One referee counted Chyna's shoulders down, the other counted, I believe it was Billy Gunn. If I remember correctly, it was the one Billy Gunn, or dare I say it, the one with the many infamous nicknames such as Mr. Ass, blah, 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 blah. But it basically showed me that both referees counted the exact same time, the exact same moment, and I got really confused by this, and I got really intrigued by Chyna. I watched more of her footage from a back, and she was an absolutely phenomenal wrestler. She even wrestled once with an injured neck at the Royal Rumble 2000, and I commended her for her performance that evening in her women's championship match against Ivory. It was phenomenal. I mean, she literally came out with an injury, and she lost because that injury made her practically unconscious. I was just completely taken aback by that match, and it was incredible what had happened with that. And honestly, I have to admit that watching all that footage on the network and everything else of Chyna was truly amazing, truly inspirational, and when I found out she was the first and only female to enter, or to become the Intercontinental Champion, I was like in shock, because there were so many great female performers that came way before her, such as Fabulous Moolah, Sunny, there was also Lita, who was in the WWE at the same time, and Trish Stratus. The list goes on and on of all the great women that Chyna was either got the chance to work with or came before her. And it's incredible. I mean, for Chyna to be involved in that list, and for everyone to say, oh, she was the first and only Intercontinental Champion that was a female, it's amazing. And she was almost the first ever known to date world champion in the WWF. She was this close, literally a hair away, milliseconds away, from winning the World Wrestling Federation Championship on national television and on national pay-per-view. And if that were to happen, it would have been an absolutely tremendous moment in WWE history. Almost as tremendous as the first female president, Hillary Clinton, hopefully, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, but regardless, Chyna, World Wrestling Entertainment, World Wrestling Federation champion. Just think about how that sounds. Think about it. Doesn't that sound almost surreal in a way for a woman to be crowned a world champion in the biggest global phenomenon in professional wrestling today? Doesn't that sound just absolutely insane, just thinking about it? Regardless, though. Back to Chyna. So many people have mentioned on Twitter and all their social media feeds how much they will miss her and how much she was an inspiration to her and everything. I'm literally just looking all over the internet right now, just all over my computer, trying to pull up those articles. But again, when I heard about it, at first I was shocked. I was literally... It was almost as shocking as when I heard Joanie Mae Young had passed away as well. And I honestly knew that was coming because I had heard about her being in hospice care and being on her last legs and all those things. And you know, it was taken aback, and you know, I was taken aback by it, and it was incredible how many, you know, how much time I spent researching that. And now to hear about something like this, it almost makes you think, well, what happened to her? Like, why did she pass away? What made her succumb to everything that happened? And it seemed to drug overdose and addiction and depression and all those, and anxiety and all those. And trust me, I know from experience, because I've dealt with some signs of depression and before, and I've had to go to numerous therapists over the years because of a whole lot of stuff that has happened to me. But I've put that in my rearview mirror now, and I've put that in my back trunk and basically forgotten about it, locked away the key, or locked it away and threw away the key. But for those, professional wrestling is prone. If you enter professional wrestling, you are bound to incur something to that effect at least once in your life. At least once, if not more. And it comes as no surprise that numerous people will pass away from drug overdoses and alcohol addictions and things like that. But with professional wrestling, it's almost a small phenomenon, and it's really interesting how many people pass away from it, and it's amazing. We've heard of people such as Andrew Test Martin, Crash Holly. The list goes on. I mean, there are numerous amounts of people that have been involved in professional wrestling as professional wrestlers before that have passed away from drug and alcohol addictions, and it's saddening to hear. I mean, God knows, we could very well be hearing in 10 years or less from now that Jeff Hardy has passed away from it, or somebody like that has passed away from it, or something to that extent. I mean, it's almost, it's just a matter of time before it actually happens with some people, whereas some people you wouldn't even fathom them passing away from something like this. And it's just absolutely incredible. But regardless, as I mentioned before, lots of professional wrestling and world-known celebrities have remarked on Chyna's passing, including, for example, David Lagana, and all of these are from Twitter. David Lagana remarked, quote, "A life cannot be assumed up in 140 characters. Chyna broke barriers and made people look at women in wrestling a whole new way. Hashtag Rip Chyna," end quote. Also, I hate technology. Also, Jim Ross has remarked on her on Twitter as well, and just so many people have remarked on Chyna in such positive lights. It's phenomenal. Scott Fishman on Twitter wrote, quote, "First woman to enter Royal Rumble, King of the Ring, and win hashtag IC title. Will never be another Chyna. Hashtag Rip Chyna. Hashtag WWE. End quote. The Wrestling Observer noted on Twitter, quote, sad to report the passing of Joanie Chyna Laurer, one of the most recognizable stars during the WWF Attitude Era at the age of 45. Jim Ross, as I mentioned on Twitter, said, quote, Pro Wrestling Insider, former WWE star Chyna passes away. Shocked to hear this. We were in contact recently. Rest in peace. And of course, this list goes on and on and on. We have Leva Bates said, Chyna broke barriers in wrestling that I never knew could be broken. Hashtag RIP. Frankie Kazarian, lots of people know him worldwide. He said, the epitome of the world pioneer, Godspeed, my fellow Kowalski alumni, Chyna. You reinvented what a female wrestler is. May you be at peace. The Young Bucks, even. The Young Bucks, of all people, tweeted someone who didn't get enough credit for what she did for women in wrestling. Sadly, she will get that recognition now. Rip Chyna. This actually brings about an interesting conversation, and of course, it's the conversation that says, basically summing it up, will Chyna ever be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? Ever since Chyna left the company on somewhat bad terms after disputes with Triple H, after Triple H apparently cheated on her and started seeing Stephanie McMahon while they were still together, I mean, it got into a really complicated and messy situation with Chyna leaving the company, and a couple years ago, or a couple months ago rather, when Triple H was on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast live on the network, he basically said that Chyna wasn't necessarily being considered for a spot in the Hall of Fame. And that was saddening to hear because, like I said, Chyna was an absolute innovator in the industry and just broke barriers that you never even could imagine being broken by a woman in the wrestling industry. Like I said, first ever female Intercontinental Champion, and to this date, the only woman to do so. First ever female to enter the Royal Rumble. Of course, women such as Beth Phoenix and Karma have followed suit, but still, being the first ever is saying something. And that was back in 1999. That was such a long time ago. Heck, in fact, I think she even repeated the next year and entered the Royal Rumble in 2000 again. So, if that's true, she's the only multi-time female entrant of the Royal Rumble match. It's insane to say that. Absolutely insane. I just can't even fathom it happening again. Who knows if it will? Who knows if we'll see it again? I certainly don't know how soon it'll come, but maybe one of these days. But there will never, ever be another Chyna again. Maybe one of these days we'll see a female world champion. Maybe one of these days something crazy will happen. I mean, there have been rumors flying rampant that Sasha Banks very well could. This is just a rumor, but she could follow in Chyna's footsteps and become the second female Intercontinental Champion and the first of the 21st century modern era. That's huge to just think about that. And it's all because Chyna was the first. There will, like everyone is saying, there will never be another Chyna. Never. Never in a million years. Never in 1,000 years. Never in history again will there be another first woman to do this, first woman to do that, yada yada blah blah blah. Chyna was basically a more masculine version of her female counterparts, and she basically said, you know what? I don't care if I'm a female. I feel I'm just as powerful, if not more powerful, than my male counterparts, and I want in on the action. And that's exactly what happened, and she started having matches that were intergender matches against male wrestlers almost twice her size. It's incredible to think about that. Absolutely amazing. Regardless, though, Chyna will forever be missed, and I will forever miss her in my heart because she was one of my favorite female wrestlers, and it's a damn shame that she never came back to the company after leaving in the early 2000s. It's a damn shame, and, but anyways, regardless, me going off on tangents, just shades of my English teacher. Going back to when I mentioned, will Chyna ever be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? Well, now that conversation's been opened up widely again, and you can almost think that if all goes well, she could be headlining the Hall of Fame next year in Orlando for WrestleMania 33 weekend. That could very well be the case, whether we like it or not, or whether the WWE likes it or not. Because no matter what, Chyna has to go into the Hall of Fame one of these days. But problems with being involved in the pornographic film industry, among other things, have basically told everybody, well, no, she's not going to be go into the Hall of Fame because of her career after the WWE, after her career with World Wrestling Entertainment ended. That's basically why she's not being considered for the Hall of Fame. Triple H mentioned on the podcast that because male boys Google her so much, that's the whole reason why she's not going to go into the Hall of Fame anytime soon. However, now that she's dead, will that change the retrospective and the perspective of WWE? Well, it could very well have a massive impact, that's for sure. Whether it's going to happen sooner or later is tough to say, and it's a hard pill to swallow, but WWE has to realize that Chyna has to go into the Hall one of these days. And honestly, I have to predict that it's going to happen within the next 5 years or less. And like I said, it could very well happen as early as next year. Because every time somebody every time somebody majorly involved in professional wrestling, more particularly the WWE itself, every time they either retire or they pass away, it's basically an open door for WWE to step up and say, all right, we'll induct them into the Hall of Fame. Of course, there have been prime examples where that hasn't happened, such as Randy Savage not being inducted for so many years after his passing. But regardless, WWE has to induct Chyna in at least the next year, if not within the next 5 years. Because otherwise, the internet is going to go mad. And all the professional wrestling fans, you know what? I'm going to say this. If WWE does not induct Chyna into the Hall of Fame by the year 2020, they're going to have a serious problem on their hands. Because now they have about 10, maybe 11 months to think about it. And they basically have until next January or February to basically say yes or no, is she going into the Hall in 2017? Most fans would definitely say yes, put her in now. She's gone. You can stop worrying about her screwing up a Hall of Fame speech at the Hall of Fame ceremony itself. That was probably the WWE's main concern with putting Chyna into the Hall of Fame, is the fact that if she were to be inducted and she were to give her acceptance speech live, would she be under the influence of drugs and or alcohol and totally botch her lines or make the company look like fools. That had to be the WWE's main concern for not inducting Chyna any sooner into the Hall of Fame. And honestly, it's a really, really heated argument and debate as to whether or not she should go into the Hall, if not when. It's not a matter of if, now it's just a matter of when. The sooner, the better, but like I said, I won't be mad if she goes into the Hall in 2035 when I'm like almost 40 years old and I basically hear Chyna is going to be inducted into the 2035 WWE Hall of Fame class. I would not even be mad at all. Well, okay, that's a lie. I will be mad, but I won't be as mad as I would be if it was after I'm dead. Because I mean, it's going to the sooner they do it, the less mad I'm going to be for Chyna not going into the Hall of Fame sooner. But again, the conversation now has switched from not if, but when Chyna will go into the Hall of Fame. Because now that she has passed away, now the WWE can relieve some of their worries and troubles about whether or not she should go into the Hall. And they can basically say, well, yeah, she's going to the Hall, but the only question is, when are they going to induct her? Is it going to be next year? Is it going to be in 2 years? Is it going to be in 5 years or 10 years? Regardless, though, she has to join the likes of Trish Stratus, Lita, Mae Young, Fabulous Moolah, all those great other women who are already in the Hall of Fame. And she's had a career that has spanned just a handful of years. But in that handful of years, in less than a decade, Chyna completely revolutionized the professional wrestling industry, let alone women's wrestling as we know it today. Because of Chyna, we now perceive women's wrestlers in a whole new light. Just think about it. If there was no Chyna, would women's wrestling be as fantastic and as well known as it is today? Well, yes and no. Yes, it may be, but it's definitely not going to have as much prominence as it does now. And it seems somewhat ironic that she did pass away on 4/20 of this year, but I mean, that's just how the cookie crumbles. That's basically like, you've basically laid your own bed once you start an addiction with drugs and alcohol. I mean, I'm not saying that those people can change later on. I'm just saying that once you go there, it's going to be really, really hard to come back from it. And we've seen it time and again with superstars such as Crash Holly and Umaga and Test and all those other people that have basically passed away because of their issues with drugs and alcohol. And now that we've already seen 2 massive deaths this year with Balls Mahoney and Chyna, now the conversation's going to have to start getting more and more intense as the years pass. And the WWE is already strict enough on its wellness policy, talent wellness. Heck, we already saw in the last month 2 wrestlers get suspended for 60 days for their violations of the wellness policy. Hence why you don't see the Ascension and the Social Outcasts without Adam Rose on WWE TV anymore. Because Connor and Adam Rose were both suspended for 60 days for their second violations of the talent wellness policy that was incepted just about a decade ago by the WWE after Chris Benoit passed away, after Eddie Guerrero passed away. These deaths in the last decade in the 2000s, we've had way too many deaths to talk about that have been attributed to drugs and or alcohol and or depression and anxiety. The conversation has got to start getting more intense now with that. And honestly, I think the WWE did a good job with the inception of the talent wellness program, but at the same time, they're going to have to start something else sooner or later before somebody on the current roster ends up killing themselves because of these issues. You're not just going to solve all these issues and make them go away with sunshine and rainbows. You have to get serious about it, and you have to take drastic measures to make an example out of those employees and say, look, we're trying to help you, but if you reject our help, you are going to end up like everybody else, and you're going to end up laying your grave and digging your own grave, and you're going to be more dead than the Undertaker is now. That's literally what the conversation has to be now. Is it has to start getting so intense to the point where maybe you have to start scaring people with like tactics of basically showing them this is what your life can look like in 5 years if you dwindle it down and start to quit, whereas this is what your life will look like if you don't. And it's either basically a tombstone or a clean bill of health. That's basically what they're going to have to basically tell people now, from now on, is, look, if you have addictions with drugs and alcohol, we can help. We are here for you. But you have to understand that if you refuse our help, you will be disciplined, and you will get in trouble, and it will affect your career as a whole. That's just basically my perspective on the talent wellness program and whatnot. But anyways, back to what I was mentioning about Chyna. Chyna, like I said, is and was a phenomenal performer. Looking back at Chyna's career, you can almost say, well, damn! Chyna was an absolute catalyst for so many things that we see nowadays. She is one of the main reasons why the current women's industry within WWE has such prominence as it does now. I mean, of course, she probably wasn't a catalyst for the now defunct, hopefully, Divas division. But still, I mean, Chyna was an innovator in the professional wrestling industry, and she was an absolute architect for the current women's division of wrestling within World Wrestling Entertainment. And her career as a whole has been a catalyst for so many changes and so many new perspectives on women's wrestling that it's almost unbearable to not think about her and not include her in the conversation of greatest women's wrestlers of all time. And maybe it's a stretch to say that she was one of the greatest Intercontinental champions of all time because she had very limited reigns and her reigns didn't last very long, but still, I mean, the one and only woman to win the Intercontinental Championship, she has to be considered one of the greats just because of that fact alone. It's easy to put her in the top 100 greatest Intercontinental champions, but it's much harder when it starts getting down to the top 50 and the top 25 and then the top 10. It gets harder and harder the more you dwindle down the list, and honestly, I have to admit, Chyna was a great performer. I mean, yes, she had numerous controversial stints, if you will, for lack of better terms, after she left WWE on bad terms, but regardless, she's still a phenomenal performer, and she must be recognized for all the hard work that she put in to the company and that she put in for the industry. She gave so much to the industry. And the pro wrestling industry has given her very little, if anything, back. I mean, how short was her stint with TNA? She only had one match with the company and was there for less than a month. That's it. Yes, she got the opportunity to renew her famous yet infamous rivalry with Jeff Jarrett, but come on. That was the most absurd and ridiculous thing I'd ever seen in my life. I thought I'd finally get a chance to see Chyna compete in the modern day level, and I would finally get a chance to see her perform on a somewhat constant basis and see what she really could do and get to view some of her prowess, but no, that's totally not the case. But anyways, short stint aside, at least she got an opportunity to work with them and rework with Jeff Jarrett and work with Kurt Angle again, and basically it was just like old times back in the WWF Attitude Era. And speaking of the Attitude Era, Chyna was all about the Attitude. She was one of the co-founders of G Generation X alongside Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And Triple H and Shawn Michaels are probably one of the main reasons why she got involved in professional wrestling in the first place, and why she got her stint with WWE in the first place. I mean, Triple H and Shawn Michaels spoke highly of her skills, and Vince and co. just basically said, alright, we'll give her a try. And she turned into one of the most phenomenal female performers of all time. Yes, there are the stints where she did pose nude for Playboy and been in some crazy pornographic films, and then there was the sex tape with Sean Waltman. But if you put all that dirty laundry aside, Chyna was an absolutely incredible performer, and she will damn well be missed by everybody in the industry. Again, like I mentioned, first female Intercontinental Champion, first female to enter the Royal Rumble, first female to enter the Royal Rumble on multiple occasions. She has been a catalyst for women's wrestling as we know it today, and Chyna will truly be missed by all of us in professional wrestling, fans and workers alike. If you want to read more about Chyna and read more about her legacy and the legacy she leaves behind, I highly encourage you to do so. Chyna was an absolutely immensely incredible and talented performer, and she will truly be missed by us all. And honestly, I have to admit that Chyna is and was an absolutely incredible performer, and I will honestly miss her very much. I, of course, want to get your thoughts. Leave any comments that you may have down below. And what was your favorite moment of Chyna's illustrious career? What are you going to miss most about her? And what do you think, dare I say it, what are you going to regret about Chyna? Leave it down in the comments. I will, of course, be overlooking them as the days go on and days go forward. But again, Chyna will dearly be missed by everybody in professional wrestling, and I sincerely send my absolute utmost sincere condolences to her friends and family. Because Chyna, you truly were the ninth wonder of the world, and there will never be another woman like you. This has been a very special edition of WrestleChat TV. I am your host, Andrew Vega. Please enjoy your day. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And rest in peace, Joanie Laurer.